Could you imagine a world where Izuku had a quirk? Yes? No? Maybe? Well, don't. Because I did. And it's awesome. I mean, imagine being able to hop through portals and be anywhere you want when you want. Be able to open a portal and just straight up punch someone through the other end. Or shoot out homing missile spatial attacks like Finral from Black Clover. Well, Izuku will have all that and more in today's story of What If Deku Had a Portal Quirk. Enjoy.
Hey Ross, sauce it up.
Alright, so we start a story in the perspective of a young Izuku who's currently at the Quirk Doctor, just anxious to find out what his quirk's gonna be. The Quirk Doctor looks at him and Inko and then goes, well, you see, your son is a bit of a strange case. It appears that he has a quirk because, as you can see, he's displaying these strange abilities, and having a book float around with him wherever he goes is not something very common. Not only that, but it appears that he has physical strength amps and speed amps for some reason. He's a lot stronger and faster than many other kids around his age, and that causes me to believe that he has some sort of enhancement type quirk. However, we cannot be too sure of this, seeing as his is a case that is completely unrecognizable. We don't really know how to track whether he has a quirk or not, so your son is kind of a weird outlier, potentially an evolution of quirk. Potentially the next step to quirk evolution. We're not quite sure at this moment, but as things stand, you can be certain your son has a quirk. The reason we say he might not is because of this little bone here. Inko listens, she's like, oh, okay, understand, doctor. And Izuku's like, so what's my quirk? And from here, out of nowhere, my man like holds out his hand and creates a little portal or fallen angel gate or whatever. Right? And when my man creates a portal, he creates another one to the side of it, and he sticks his hand and his hand comes out the other portal. And the doctor and Inko were both shocked. They're like, ayo, how did Mance figure out how to do that? But essentially, Izuku is just having the time of his life. I mean, imagine you find out that you have the ability to literally create portals, bro. How lit is that? It's just incredible. I don't know why nobody's thought of this idea, but essentially, if you've never seen Black Clover and you just watch my videos, Deku's just gonna have this space magic where he can create portals, he can shoot spatial attacks, and that's pretty much it. So yeah, let me know if I missed something down below in the comments and some other attacks and powers that Finral should be having access to in the future, and I'll definitely make sure to take accountability for those in the next part. So yeah, anyways, so what ends up happening from here, I believe, is Izuku essentially goes to school the next day, right? Now, him being a kid and Bakugo recently having unlocked his quirk, he's feeling like he's the top of the game, you know? Bakugo's feeling like he's the strongest, can't nobody touch me, you know that feeling. But Deku comes in and everybody's like, so Izuku, what quirk did you get? And he shows him, he creates a portal and he tosses an apple into it and creates another one and it pops right out. And they're like, whoa, teleportation? And Deku's like, yeah, I can create portals. And the doctor said I'm really strong and fast. Immediately, Bakugo comes up to him and he's like, wow, Izuku, that's a pretty strong quirk, but you're still not stronger than me. And Deku says, yeah, Ka-chan, your quirk is amazing, but I think my quirk is pretty good too. I just hope that someday we get to both become pro heroes. I know I'll definitely be excited to become the number 2 hero. And Bakugo looks at him and he's like, wait, number 2? Izuku's like, yeah, number 1 is for you, right, Bakugo? And, you know, Ka-chan just smiles and he's like, yeah, you're gonna be the greatest backup hero ever, Izuku. We're gonna train so hard and we're gonna become extremely powerful heroes. From here, we're gonna be having a little bit of a time skip, in which during this time skip, Inko got a little greedy with her son's quirk. Keep in mind, Izuku's portals, basically, he can open them whenever and wherever he wants. He just needs to have seen the location that he's going to be teleporting to. And I am not sure if he like needs to see it with his own eyes, like physically be there, or if he simply needs to see it like on a picture. You guys could definitely let me know that down below in the comments, because I'm not really too sure. I did watch Black Clover up till like episode 100 something, but just honestly, Finral has always been one of my favorite characters in Black Clover. I know I'm a lame-o, but it is what it is. That said, though, Izuku pretty much ends up flying all over the world with Inko. Anytime that he has a summer break, Izuku and Inko always go travel places. And Inko does this so that Izuku could see the places and open portals back home and to the place whenever she wants to get some American breakfast or something like that. You know what I mean? Like, she travels from place to place to get things that she wants cheaper. She travels from place to place to get things that she wants for groceries. Like, Inko and Izuku are living their best life. My man Izuku could like honestly work as a UPS shipper and mans would be making bank, but he wants to become a pro hero. So that aside, yeah, so we have a time skip until the day around that last day of the 10-month training camp. Exams, no, not exams, but beach. Remember when Izuku was training? Yeah, he's doing that. So during this time, Deku and Bakugo would have both grown up to kind of have their own individual personalities. Deku during this time would have ended up having more of a like I like girls personality. Like my man's Deku is definitely in that, like he's cocky, you know, he likes flirting it up. He's also goofy and he's also a bit shy as well. Pretty much think Finral, except not that much scared, seeing as this version of Deku is a little more cockier when it comes to his quirk, seeing as he does know that his quirk has incredible potential. I mean, the man can teleport. Who else can do that? So Deku is definitely like he feels himself, if you know what I'm saying. Like the man is definitely like he's up there. He's up there with the greats. So yeah, Izuku and Bakugo both would have trained their quirks up until this point, and Bakugo would be substantially more powerful than the one in the original because he's been training with Deku for so long. Deku at this point would have overcame his weakness, which was essentially his mana drain and his stomach aches, which he used to have a lot of. And this would always cause him to have to go running home straight to the bathroom and lock himself in there, take his shirt off, and we all know how that goes. So man was fighting for his life. Anyways though, so what ends up happening from here is essentially Izuku and Bakugo are training, right? Now they're both doing some sparring and Bakugo's about to come in with an explosion. Deku hits him with one of his abilities, which is essentially a spatial orb that teleports Bakugo away. Except this time, Deku wanted to try more of an offensive tactic. So he shoots an orb that's actually meant to damage him. He puts in a lot of power into it and he doesn't know the true extent of its capabilities. But what actually ends up happening is essentially the orb like pretty much follows Bakugo, like heat signature, it follows him. And it almost eradicates this man Bakugo from the face of the earth because like spatial magic like erases you. It's as plain as I can put it. If you don't have mana and you don't have a way to counter it, you're pretty much dead. I'm sorry. But yeah, Deku gets hit with Bakugo doesn't get hit with the attack. He barely dodges, and I mean barely dodges at the last second, and it ends up hitting a scrap of trash, a metal piece that ends up being completely disintegrated and just erased from existence. And when Bakugo turns around to see what had happened with a smile on his face, it quickly disappears. He's like, Izuku, did you just almost kill me? He gets angry and Izuku's like, Bakugo, you know that's my fault. He's like, I mean, at least it didn't kill you and now we know not to use it. But Bakugo gets enraged and ends up following Izuku, but Izuku creates a portal home and Bakugo's just left on the beach shooting explosions like, you almost killed me, damn it. But essentially what ends up happening is Bakugo decides, whatever, it was an accident anyways. And he thinks back to all the times that he pretty much caused huge scars on Deku with this mad crazy explosion. But it is what it is, and eventually they both end up getting to the day where they're both taking the entrance exams. I would go really into depth with this, but I'm basically just going to be skipping everything until the robo portion. Now, I wish I could tell you guys that Deku meets Araka, yada yada yada, but my man is too focused on what he's there for to do any of that. So essentially what ends up happening is Deku makes it to the outside robot portion and he decides that there's no reason to go to the front. So Ida never stops him, and essentially as soon as Present Mike says that they can go, Deku opens a portal underneath himself, jumps in it and falls right back into the arena, where he proceeds to open tons of portals underneath these robots and send them flying from as high as they could possibly go. And when they fall to the ground, they just shatter, they break. These robots don't have that much durability. And Izuku just basically does this. Think what Uraraka does, where she makes them light and they fall. That's essentially what Deku does. He also, since these are inanimate objects, uses that one ability that pretty much erases them from all existence. And he teleports a bunch of robots away with his magic. He goes around running as fast as he possibly can, using mana skin to improve his durability and stuff like that. And my man just runs in and does his thing. I mean, this man is going off in every single way, shape, and form you can think of. And in case you guys think I'm not being too detailed when it comes to his attacks and stuff like that, genuinely speaking, it's because I don't really know the full extent of Finral's powers. That's why I'm hoping you guys could let me know what's up down below in the comments. That way I can add more like spadazzle onto part 2, you know what I mean? So regardless though, what ends up happening is Deku obliterates a bunch of robots, as you would expect, and he passes. I mean, when the zero pointer ends up arriving, that definitely does pose a big problem, because Deku's never opened a portal that big under it. So essentially what he does is open a portal underneath Uraraka to save her, and he takes her away. This version of Deku doesn't actually end up taking out the zero pointer, and instead opts to just leave it alone. So no rescue points, but he got more than enough hero points to keep his first spot position in the robot entrance exam. When they both, and by both I mean Bakugo and Deku, end up, deciding that they want to, open their acceptance letters together, and Bakugo overhears that Izuku got the highest scores, he immediately gets enraged. He's like, "What? Izuku? How'd you get a higher score than me?" And Deku just shrugs. He's like, "I don't know, Bakugo. I mean, I did my best, you know what I mean?" And come to realize he got 2 points over Bakugo, and that just makes this man mad. So yeah, my man Bakugo just gonna have to live with it. But essentially the day comes where their first day of UA happens, and they end up being dropped off by Mitsuki at the front gates. When they arrive, they both wave her off, and Mitsuki looks to Bakugo before smacking him in the head and saying, "Don't cause any problems." She then turns to Izuku and says, "Listen, you're like a son that I never had, so make sure he stays in line." Izuku laughs, and he would then proceed to say, sure thing, Katsuki," what's her name? Mizuki. Yeah, Mitsuki. No, yeah, Mitsuki. Sorry, Mitsuki. From here, she smiles, and Bakugo and Deku get off the car, and she peels off driving as fast as she can, almost getting a speeding ticket. But from here, Izuku and Bakugo end up finding their way towards Class 1A, and they end up sitting towards the front, with them both really wanting to learn as much as they can in UA, so they're not exactly going to be sitting in the back or the middle. They're both directly in the front, and as soon as they get in there, Bakugo puts his feet on the desk, and Deku is honestly just looking around. Like, my man is scouting the area, where he's like looking at everybody, browsing the competition, like in terms of the guys that are there. He sees Todoroki, he's like, all right, he's gonna be a threat, but nothing I can't get past. And then he looks at Momo, Uraraka, and all the girls that are walking into his classroom, and he's like, oh yeah, that's what I like to see. You know what I mean? Like, my man is having a good time just looking at all his potential candidates. And eventually, Uraraka ends up walking into class. She's one of the last ones, and by this time, Ida was already trying to argue with Bakugo, but Deku told Ida to beat it, and Ida now has to argue with 2 people. So when Uraraka walked in and she saw Izuku and Bakugo arguing with Ida, she walks up and goes, "Hey, you're the kid who saved me, right?" And Izuku's just about to say something before Aizawa cuts this man off disrespectfully and tells everybody to meet him outside. They would do so, and when they get there, he tosses a ball straight to Izuku, telling him, "Here, kid, toss it." Izuku says, "As far as I can," and Aizawa says, "Sure thing, it doesn't matter." Deku immediately opens a portal to America, and pretty much he tosses a ball through the portal, and the ball just drops out. And Aizawa's tracker ain't no way that it's about to track that many meters. So I'm just gonna be saying that Izuku gets infinity, and everybody watches at that marker, and they're just like, "What?" But Izuku just, he shrugs, and then he's like, "Hope you guys can keep up." Kaminari would be like, "This is gonna be so much fun, I can't wait." And Aizawa turns to them before immediately telling them that, "Fun, huh? They'll be expelled since they think it's so fun. Whoever comes in last place is going to be immediately removed from the pro hero course." And immediately everybody starts shitting themselves. They're like, "Hey, yo, like, I didn't say it was going to be that much fun. Like, please don't kick us out." But Aizawa, my man, don't give two F's about what they're thinking. So he pretty much proceeds to go through with everything else. And eventually all of them have to do the 50-meter dash. Deku goes through a portal, the grip strength test. Deku does pretty good in terms of that. He ends up doing the ball throw once again, immediately getting infinity. And when it comes to the side-to-side jumps, what Deku does is pretty much create portals that make it so that that he just jumps into it and he like falls out immediately. So it's like side to side and he's just like throwing himself into the portals and being launched out at super speeds. When Deku gets out, he is so dizzy because he's like, why did I do that? But he immediately goes to the back, and it's at this moment that one of the girls in UA, Momo, would actually end up asking him like what his quirk exactly is. Izuku tells her that his quirk is a spatial quirk, that essentially what he was told is that he has the ability to create portals and use spatial attacks. Momo thinks that's extremely interesting, and she would ask about the Grimoire, with Deku saying, oh, I call it my Grimoire. It pretty much is active anytime I try to use my quirk. Momo would think that that's pretty interesting, seeing as she's never seen anything like that. And Izuku would simply nod, before then watching as Bakugo just throws that ball as far as he possibly could, getting about, let's say, 100 more meters than he got in the original. That's how much more powerful his explosions are, which is, not too much, but definitely a lot more stronger. Seeing as a Bakugo who had been training for like a year almost in UA, didn't really get that much stronger with his explosions, but more or less gained more experience with his quirk. So this Bakugo has more strength and that same amount of experience. So Bakugo is pretty strong at this point. Except Izuku, honestly, at this point, Izuku would definitely destroy this man Bakugo. But, he's never said anything though. Anyways though, the test would end up ending and Izuku would actually end up trying to flirt it up with Momo a little bit. Momo, being the person that she is, she would get extremely shy and red in the face at this and think that Izuku, he's actually kind of cute. Now Izuku basically looks like just the way that he looks like in canon, a little bit taller. This time he dyed his hair just like Finral, because why not? And he just has like a more confident aura to him. He also has a muscular build, which definitely helps his case with the females. And my man is doing his thing, you know what I mean? But essentially what ends up happening is they end up going home and nothing happens, so I'm skip it. They come back to school about 3 days later, and it's at this point that we see All Might busting into the door being like, I'm a normal hero. Everybody's like, All Might, what are you doing here? And All Might would look at them before saying, well, kids, I'm going to be the one in charge of class. Everybody loses their minds. And from here, All Might is like, yeah. And from here, everybody's like, well, that's pretty good. And essentially All Might just tells him that to be a pro, you have to look like a pro. He presses a button on a remote that he has, and the wall would shift to reveal all of their costumes. From here, everybody gets dressed, and we have the typical My Hero song playing in the background as everybody walks out looking awesome with their costumes. Can we just talk about how dopey Izuku's first costume look was? I'm hoping that by the end of the series, Izuku gets a really cool superhero upgrade where it's not that much tech and it's more just a spandex or whatever. You know what I mean? Like All Might's costume. But, you never know. Izuku is going to be a different person. So who knows what it is that Horikoshi's going to give him. Anyways though, when All Might's outside, he proceeds to look at them and say, so how do you guys feel about UA so far? And everybody smiles. They're like, honestly, it's awesome. They would ask if they're going to be expelled this time, and All Might would say, not quite. Something like that. And then being all like, well, that's Aizawa's way of doing things, not mine. So class, get ready for the heroes versus villains. But before that, a word from our sponsor. As anime fans, we love to show our support to our favorite shows by rocking anime apparel. But something I'm pretty sure we can all agree on is it's so expensive. So I've partnered up with Fandom to bring you all affordable, high quality anime merch that you are sure to love. And if you use my code ZETHER at checkout, you can even get an extra 10% off the already affordable merch. Keep in mind, it does come from overseas sellers, so its sizing is going to be different since it's overseas. That said, let's get back into the video. At this point, All Might would tell everybody in the class to pick a little sheet of paper which will tell them who their teammate and partner is going to be. When they would do so, they would end up getting the drafting ready, and from here, All Might would establish everybody in the system for the Heroes vs Villains 2v2 battle trial. everybody would begin getting extremely excited and pumped up, and Izuku would actually be partnered up with Uraraka just like in the original, except he's not actually going to be fighting against Bakugo or Tenya Ida this time. Instead, he's going to be fighting up against Todoroki and Tsuyu, since I used a random generator for the opponents that he was going to be facing. That said, I see this all going something like this. So I think Izuku and Uraraka are just kind of going to be having a little bit of a first awkward interaction, seeing as they never really do talk with each other. Uraraka being the person that she is, where she's more extroverted, she would definitely be more carrying the conversation. And seeing as Izuku likes what he sees in terms of the costume, he compliments her, causing her to blush. He's like, that costume looks pretty good. Uraraka gets flustered and she's like, yeah, thanks. But from here, Izuku just looks at her and smiles, and he then would tell her that here's the plan. We know that one kid with the half and half hair color has an ice quirk. That's going to be a bit of a problem, but I think I should be able to get that out of the way. For the other girl, I think that's something that you will potentially be able to take care of. I'm going to jump in there and throw off the kid with the red and white hair, and I think you're going to be more in charge of just getting to the bomb so that we can have a fast victory. I wouldn't exactly be able to see everything, but I'm just going to bust in there, take a quick look around, and immediately open a portal underneath me to get out of there and come right back to you. So just wait here and I'll give you the signal when you can come back up there as soon as I come back, alright? Uraraka nods, and Izuku proceeds to go up the flight of stairs, basically getting his way towards where he believes that they're at. Once he hears Todoroki and Tsuyu talking, he immediately blows open the door, looks around. Todoroki gets on guard and is ready to use his ice quirk. Well, he already did, seeing as he froze the upper 2 floors, so it's pretty cold. But Izuku, after he sees that Todoroki's ready to launch an attack, he would proceed to pretty much fall back, like a trust fall, into a portal where he pretty much falls right into Uraraka. And she's like, was that the signal? And Izuku's like, sorry about that, I didn't mean to fall on you. He totally did. And from here they get up, and Izuku would tell her that here's the plan. He's going to open a portal and she just needs to jump on the bomb. It's as easy as that. Uraraka says, right. Izuku opens a portal underneath him and her, and the portal opens, revealing Izuku right next to Todoroki as he shoots a spatial magic orb that pretty much teleports Todoroki away, and Uraraka hops on top of the bomb just like she did in the original, catching the dub for the hero team. With Bakugo watching, thinking to himself that, yep, that's something that Izuku would do. Not even try to fight him, just get the job done. He smiles and says, that Izuku, he never does want to have a straight up fight. He would then smile, thinking to himself that, I guess it's kind of cool. It's manly in his own way. And so everybody would be shocked, with Momo saying that the MVP is clearly Izuku. Todoroki would get pretty mad at the way that everything happened, and he's just like, bro, how did this go down like this? Bro, this was not supposed to happen. Todoroki is clearly salty, but we eventually have all of the remaining battles go down, and Bakugo ends up sweeping whoever it is that he ends up facing. But after this, everybody just kind of decides that, yeah, you know what? It's about time that they all go home. So they would do so, and about a week later, after getting permission to sign to go to the USJ, everybody's on the bus, and as I would tell everybody, alright, we're here. Ida would begin getting up, as he was actually Clash Rep, seeing as Deku decided that after that amazing display of leadership that Ida displayed, he should be the Clash Rep. And Ida, he's pretty happy with that. So what ends up happening here is Ida tells everybody to get off, and they meet the pro hero 13. She begins to explain everything to everybody, being like, alright, quirks are dangerous, quirks are this, and that. And everybody obviously listens, being respectful. But eventually, a black mist would appear in the center of the stadium and say, sorry to have crashed the party, heroes. But it looks like we weren't invited. Immediately after this, Kurogiri would proceed to summon all of the remaining villains that would arrive in the USJ. And as soon as Izuku sees this, he would decide that he has to do something about it, opening a portal underneath himself before then jumping into it and appearing above Kurogiri. He comes down and actually tries to hit Kurogiri with a punch, but it just goes right through. It's as if Kurogiri's body isn't solid at all. He goes to the ground and realizes he's about to fall, so he opens a portal underneath himself once more and then lands right next to Bakugo, who at this point would blast off into the sky and shoot a full power explosion at the direction of Kurogiri's metal piece, the only part that's tangible about him. Following this, Bakugo holds him down for a second, before then, Deku looks at him and says, "That's perfect." And from here, Izuku proceeds to pretty much open a portal directly to that of the heroes, with it then following, taking only about 1 minute for all of the heroes to be gathered in one location, for Deku to create a portal large enough for all of them to go through, with all of the heroes that would have arrived in canon about 10 minutes later arriving right on time. Izuku doing this would pretty much become the MVP of the USJ, and with this assistance from the heroes, there would be 0 incidents, and nobody even got teleported to different locations because Kurogiri didn't have the time. The heroes were far too prepared for this with the inclusion of Izuku with a portal quirk. So things are not exactly going to be going the way that the villains would have expected things to. Instead, Izuku was the one in tangent that they didn't think for. And so, the villains were all taken care of, and all thusly locked in Tartarus. Keep in mind, Bakugo was holding Kurogiri down. He could not teleport them away. So the villains were all promptly taken to prison, and even the Nomu was defeated by that of All Might and the help from a couple extra pro heroes who were there to back All Might up. As soon as everything was over, all of the students would promptly be given about 1 week off of school, and when they returned, they would be informed of the UA Sports Festival by Aizawa. He would also end up giving Izuku an award for Best Acting Hero in that situation. And Izuku would smile at this. Aizawa would inform him that he's going to be giving a speech at the UA Sports Festival and to be ready, and Izuku would honestly be like, okay, that is a little worrying. But regardless though, he decides, oh, whatever, I'll do whatever I have to do then. And so about another week goes by, right? And during this week, Izuku would really not be up to much. You know, he's excuse me, sorry. Oh my god. I got caught off guard. Anyways, so yeah, Izuku at this point, like I said, was not doing much and just kind of was getting himself ready in terms of the speech for the UA Sports Festival. Eventually the day comes and Izuku would be sporting his, his outfit like everybody else. He goes to the top with Midnight introducing him, and Izuku then proceeds to say that this victory is going to be for all the pretty ladies out in the stands. And all the girls would have like mixed reactions. Some of them like smile at this, some of them are like, oh, this weirdo. And Izuku just laughs as he then proceeds to tell everybody, no, but seriously though, everybody here in the stadium, yada yada yada. He hypes everybody up, and thusly Deku gets voted fan favorite by everybody because he didn't give some awful speech like Bakugo saying, I'm gonna win. Instead, he said a perfect thing. Like, I mean, he could not have said anything better in that situation. And Izuku, I mean, he outdid himself really. Following this, Midnight would announce the first event of the US Sports Festival, and that would be the race. Now, unfortunately, I wish I could tell you guys that this was some hard-fought battle, but with the fact that Deku has a portal quirk being a thing, Izuku kind of just jumps through the portal as soon as the starting pistol is blown, getting there and breaking the record for fastest time ever. Everybody in the stands would be like, I mean, that's one way to do it. And Izuku would just be doing his thing, you know what I mean? Like, Izuku at this point is up in the air, he's enjoying his time and nobody can touch him. Izuku got the 100 million point headband and now everybody is gunning for him. However, Izuku's team, it would still be comprised of that of Tokiyami, Uraraka, and Mei Hatsume because she wants to show off her babies. Actually, let me change one of those characters. I'm going to be taking out Mei Hatsume. She's not really that useful to them. Well, oh my god. No, I'm going to be taking out Tokiyami and replacing him with Bakugo, who is going to be at the top. And Izuku is going to be helping them take a bunch of headbands by simply opening portals near the opponent's heads. And opening a portal for Bakugo to stick his hand in and grab all of the headbands. This would lead to an unprecedented win with the heroes, or Izuku's team, over everybody else, because Izuku ended up stealing the headbands of everybody so fast that nobody could have even reacted. This leads to everybody being like, this is the first time this has ever happened. I mean, you guys can feel free to just take the headbands back. But Izuku says that's not happening. And he then proceeds to open portals underneath everybody and drop them as high as they are from the sky, saying, you either give up or we win. And everybody's like, okay, we give up! Or most people give up, and Izuku catches them all with the portal, letting them fall down onto the ground safely so that nobody was actually injured. Following this, we have battles, and the first battle would actually be between Katsuki Bakugo and Izuku Midoriya, with the other being Uraraka versus Mei Hatsume. She utterly embarrasses Uraraka, but she ends up winning after all, and Izuku and Bakugo ends up going down super similar to how their usual spars happen. Immediately, Bakugo rushes into Izuku and begins trying to use his explosion ability, but every time that Bakugo goes to throw a punch, Izuku creates a portal, and the portal would appear right beside Bakugo's face, and it's trying to make Bakugo hit himself, but he knows this attacks all too well, so he doesn't end up shooting the explosions and pulls his hits back, so he's not able to fully hit himself. That said, Izuku already accounted for this, and thinking to himself that the easiest way to win this is to simply make Bakugo go out of bounds, he opens a portal underneath Bakugo that he falls into and appears out of bounds, making Izuku the winner of the first round. And the finale comes up, because keep in mind, everybody had to either give up or they were going to die. My man Izuku opened a portal like 5,000 meters in the air. They were going to die. Everybody had to quit or it was GG on their lives. You know what I mean? That said, Izuku versus Uraraka would finally go up, and when Izuku looks at her, he just says, "I'm sorry about this." And Uraraka knows exactly what's coming. Before she realizes it, she goes, "Ah!" And she falls out of bounds, with Izuku being crowned the winner, and everybody thinking that this was kind of a, wacky UA sports festival. I mean, Izuku's quirk was pretty much built for each and every single one of these events, and it was completely unfair the way that everything was laid out. Izuku would be crowned the winner, and he would end up getting a ton of hero offers from different agencies, which would be kind of a good thing, but all in all, Izuku would end up deciding that he's going to be interning with the agency of... drumroll please. I don't know. Alright, simply put, I have no idea. I'm sorry. I genuinely don't know. He's not going to be going with Gran Torino because A, he's just not going to. He doesn't have one for all, sorry. And instead, Mirio is the one who actually got the quirk in this version because he never met Izuku. So Mirio ended up getting the quirk at the end of the day. That leads to Ida, who is still angered at Stain going out and getting killed. Izuku honestly doesn't know what hero agency he goes to, but seeing as regardless of what hero agency he does end up going to, there's not going to be any imminent threat, I genuinely see no purpose in covering this arc. So we're going to breeze by it, saying that Izuku got a little bit of learning experience. However, once they found out about Ida's death, the internships were cancelled and UA was put under a strict watch list by the government themselves, saying that their funding is going to be cut if they let something like this happen once more. They already had to deal with heroes, and while nobody was hurt whatsoever, this is something that was definitely going to tarnish UA's name. The Ida family would actually end up vouching for UA, saying that Ida was actually in searching for Stain and that the reason that he went over there was because of that. But at the end of the day, the UA school commission would have ended up deciding that they allowed him to get near Stain, and so they should be the ones to pay the price for it. So funding for UA slightly got cut back a lot, and UA received a ton of backlash, with a lot of the heroes actually having some doubts about remaining in the UA high school track. But ultimately, all of them would end up staying, trying to be strong for Ida, because that's what they would have wanted. Izuku would actually end up taking over Ida's spot in command, and what would end up happening from here is essentially the heroes are just enjoying their time. All in all, they are. You know, after all, I mean, they had about 1 month of being unsure if the school was going to be remaining, but once they returned, they were happy to hear that now they were going to get to go to the forest training arc after taking their finals. And honestly, Izuku studies pretty well, you know what I mean? Like, Izuku is pretty smart, so he ends up passing his final. When it comes to the teacher that he's actually going to be having to fight against, I think that a good opponent for him would be that one guy that can create a bunch of clones of himself. And his teammate is going to be... who should his teammate be? Sato, because I don't know, why not? Okay? His teammate Sato, and Izuku decides that, you know, this is going to not exactly be the easiest battle that he's ever had to face. Izuku has been working on one thing, however, which is opening tons and tons and tons of portals. And while the hero would try to pretty much begin to create a bunch of a bunch of copies of himself, we see Sato eating a bunch of sugar and rushing in trying to hit them all. This approach doesn't work, however, it does buy Izuku more than enough time to open tons of portals underneath these copies, which leads to him putting them in a state of kind of repeating going through a portal. He puts one under them and one over them, meaning that no matter what they do, they just fall into this endless void of portals. And eventually, the hero would end up giving up due to the fact that this was like torture. So by the time that he finally was dropped at the end, he was in a bad state. His stomach was upside down, and my man proceeded to all over the place, because that's just a face I wouldn't wish on anybody. But that said, what ends up happening from here is essentially the heroes just kind of do their thing. I mean, there's nothing too special that really happens after this point. All the heroes just end up doing their own things, and eventually the forced training arc goes down. I would love to tell you guys that, oh my god, like the villains actually end up attacking this time, but they don't. And one basic reason for this being because the heroes don't. I mean, Shigaraki and Kurogiri are gone, obviously. And the Stain situation never ended up happening, meaning we don't get the inclusion of Dabi, we don't get the inclusion of Toga, Spinner, or any of the other people who ended up joining the League of Villains afterwards. Instead, what ends up happening is a full-scale attack on Tartarus. However, due to the fact that Izuku has a portal quirk and would have actually visited Tartarus one time when he was a little kid, because, he's really interested in heroes, I believe he definitely would have done this at least once or twice. He ends up being informed by this from Nezu, and once Nezu informs Izuku of this, seeing as now all of them are in a dormitory system, Izuku is able to gather up all the heroes and teleport them straight to that location, leading to a battle between All Might and All for One that happened so different to what they got in the original. Instead of what ended up happening normally, where All for One ends up fighting All Might and Kamino, what ends up happening this time is they fight right at Tartarus, causing a bunch of inmates to actually have their cells broken, and a bunch of villains end up pretty much getting into the ensued battle. A bunch of UA students would actually end up getting involved once they see that the hero side is starting to lose, and Izuku would actually begin portaling around to different hero agencies, grabbing as many heroes as they could possibly get, leading to the eventual win over the heroes and the villains. Because not only is Izuku able to actually grab a bunch of heroes from different agencies, he actually gets a bunch of heroes in training from different areas of UA, ranging from 1A to 2B to 2A to I don't know, 3 something, basically all the classes of UA. So the heroes pretty much ended up outclassing, or like outnumbering the villains. Yeah, that's the word that I was looking for. Outnumbering the villains, leading to the villains losing, thus being put back in Tartarus, and more villains actually being put in there because All for One was there to launch a full-scale attack to break them all out. With the League of Villains main leader being taken out, the only villain that we really have left in the series now is Overhaul. So following these events, we all know what happens after this. They have the provisional hero license stuff, and this isn't really nothing that happens in terms of conflict. We all know that all the heroes are eventually going to get their pro hero licenses, so I see no real reason to change this event, except for when they all get ambushed by a bunch of, the red balls that they get thrown at them, and by them I mean class 1A, Izuku's actually able to open portals and shoot them back at all of them, so that all the people that try to ambush them actually are the ones that ended up ambushing themselves. Yeah, it's pretty interesting, but I genuinely believe that would be a good way to do things. And I know it sounds like a huge stretch. All the events that have happened so far, they sound like a huge stretch, but think about it. Izuku is honestly one of the greatest assistant heroes you could ever have. Finro doesn't have the personality of him wanting to be the greatest hero of the world. He more has a personality of wanting to help people and having friends. He's more in terms of like genuinely wanting Bakugo to be the best hero, and Izuku be the number 2, being more of a supporting one. Izuku ends up gathering, after he graduates and defeats Overhaul, I think that something that would be realistically possible in his area would be amassing a huge agency that has a bunch of talent, a bunch of quirks, and a bunch of different things that Izuku could pretty much do. So whenever there's a crime, Izuku just opens portals to different parts of Japan, and he would obviously scout these areas via helicopter, so he's able to open portals to wherever, whenever he wants, if that makes sense. That said, what ends up happening from here is, like I said, everybody takes their provisional hero license exams, and all of the heroes end up passing, just like many of you guys would expect. Seeing as we're basing this portal quirk off of, or not quirk, but portal magic off of, Finral himself, we had to give Izuku a little bit of that personality. So, what happens here? Oh yeah, the big three introduce themselves, and this is where the overhaul arc begins. I still see Izuku going with Mirio due to impressing him when it comes to the battle area. See, when Mirio jumps back up to try to uppercut him or poke him in the eye, Izuku creates a portal right in front of Mirio's punch, and Mirio, never seeing something like this before, immediately just punches himself straight in the gut full force as hard as he was about to punch Izuku, knocking the wind out of himself. And when he tries to permeate into the ground, he pretty much goes into space, and that's because he permeates. I don't know how to explain this, but he's not tangible to the point where he goes to the floor. But you can't just go through space, a portal that is created through spatial magic nonetheless. So when Mirio goes through this spatial magic, he actually ends up going through the portal, coming out a different spot, but since he's still phasing, he just phases through the ground and immediately pops back up faster than Izuku could react, sending a gut punch straight towards Izuku, sending him hurling to the ground, with Izuku being decently happy with the results, saying that he definitely needs more experience, and Mirio saying that he's a great hero overall. He would love to have an internship with him, with Tsunade. Izuku hearing this would be extremely ecstatic, thinking to himself that, going with you? I mean, sure, yeah, that sounds awesome. Mirio says to himself, great, well then I guess I'll see you there. And from here, Izuku goes to the internship with Overhaul. Keep in mind, Mirio has one for all, so if he really wanted to, he could have activated that to like 40% and absolutely demolished this man Deku with the punch. That would have GG'd the series, but he's a hero, keep that in mind. That said though, what ends up happening from here is Izuku visits the agency that Nade is a part of, and Nade, knowing that Izuku has a portal quirk and is able to pretty much like stick his hand through and react to stuff, he realizes that Izuku would end up ultimately failing because of him being able to see the future. But just because of the fact that he actually has a really promising quirk, and the fact that Mirio is vouching for him, and this time he doesn't even have one for all, Tsunade is more than a little willing to actually help this kid out. So eventually the day comes where he and Izuku would actually end up, or not he and Izuku, but Mirio and Izuku end up doing a bit of a patrol. And this time when Eri comes out, I'd like to think that Mirio, seeing a helpless, defenseless girl trying to run away from the villain they've been trying to catch, would immediately act as he should have in the original, activating 40% full cowling and blitzing Overhaul before he even had the chance to see what was coming, phasing through the ground and coming in with a full power 40% uppercut that almost sends Overhaul's head flying off of his shoulders by how powerful this attack genuinely was. And that's what ends up happening. After this, like I said, we really have no villains, and following these events, we simply just have Eri trying to be, made feel good by the rest of the classroom, Izuku continuing his journey at 1A, but following this, there's no conflict, there is no Overhaul, there is no League of Villains, and the Liberation Army is something that Hawks at this moment I'm pretty sure is working on. So Izuku doesn't even get involved with that of the Liberation Army, and even in the original would have never gotten involved until he became a full-fledged hero. So this kind of ends up being the conclusion to the story of what if Deku had a portal quirk, or what if Deku had spatial magic. I hope you enjoyed this, and if you did at any point enjoy this series, go back to part 1 and like the video up to help it do well in the algorithm, as well as, you could potentially help out the channel by clicking on the movie version of this and liking the video. Maybe dropping a comment, maybe just let a couple of my videos play through for some crispy watch time. No, I'm kidding. I'm basically farming off reviews at that point. But seriously though, if you enjoyed any part of this, make sure to go down below, slap that like button, turn on post notifications, because very soon I'm going to be dropping a banger Naruto with it for those of you asking. That said, I love each and every single one of you guys. It has been your boy Zether, and I am out.